When I first came to Blackburn in 1971, I was amazed by the size of the crowds at Alexandra Meadows to watch East Lancs, particularly for a cup game. And of course, they brought in some of the world's top stars to play as pros in the league. Anyway, well before that, in 1949, one Lancashire League match between Rawtenstall and Bacup was watched by some 10,000 people. It was also captured on film, giving us an amazing insight into life in Lancashire and post-war Britain. In November 2005, BBC Radio Lancashire's Chris Ryder got together with some of the players at Rawtenstall Cricket Ground to look back on the summer of '49. Play it again.
Here at Rawtenstall Cricket Club, they've been playing cricket for more than 100 years. The picturesque hills of Rossendale surround this tiny ground tucked away close to the town centre. It's all quiet here now, but all was very different back in the post-war years, when this place was packed out for a rather special match. I'm Chris Ryder, and for this week's The Feature, I've come here to reflect on the summer of '49, and in particular the events of the 18th of July. It was that afternoon that 10,000 people came here to see a derby match in the Lancashire League between Rawtenstall and Bacup. It was a match which was also captured on film, and now some of the former players and fans who were there have returned to share their memories of what was a golden age of cricket.
They used to tell you where to shove your bat.
Absolutely, yeah.
Ken Barnes, Bob Banks and David Whittaker, who played for Rawtenstall, and Dick Dunham, who was in the Bacup team, came back to the ground for a trip down memory lane and to watch the film of the match.
The cast includes cricket lovers of Rossendale, the Rawtenstall and Bacup first 11 players, members of the Rawtenstall committee, and many league professionals who have given their services.
The film was made by the Rawtenstall president George Whittaker, a local businessman and something of an entrepreneur who loved his cricket and decided that the match should be properly recorded. Committee member Brian Manning says the film, now on a DVD, is a crucial part of the club's history.
I think he had always understood that there was a need to sort of put something on record, and choosing the Rawtenstall Bacup game, which of course is a great derby game, was probably the best time to do it in the season. The weather was great. There were a guaranteed major crowd of 10,000 people, and the consequence of that was that seeing that put together by people who I believe actually worked for him at the time was innovative, and to see a film of that nature in colour as well was great. And it was only in subsequent years that we found the actual original copy, which was with his son, who gave it to us, and then we were able to make some video copies and subsequently DVDs, which are currently for sale. And the original film is in the care of Northwest Film Archive now.
Among the players who were part of that golden age were two of the world's best.
Everton Weekes, the Bacup professional and West Indian Test cricketer. He is the only player ever to have scored 5 consecutive centuries in Test matches. Powerful wrist action.
Everton Weekes and the Indian Test player Vijay Hazare were two of the big names in world cricket, and here they were in Rawtenstall, starring in a true Lancashire derby.
But when Greek meets Greek, then comes the tug of war, and the derby match between Rawtenstall and Bacup is no exception. Local rivalry runs high.
The first inkling the players had of just how many people were going to be at this game was when they got on the bus or walked to the ground.
I used to work at the Green Bridge factory, which is the shoe factory. I came from there at 12 o'clock, and the queues from the Bacup Road gates were about 100 yards long, and that was at around 12 o'clock.
I had to catch a bus to Rawtenstall, and I couldn't get on the buses. There were so many people waiting for queuing up to get on the bus. And he said, let this lad on. He said, he's playing, so they let me. I got on before them all. So that was very, very good of them, wasn't it?
Were you getting worried you wouldn't get there?
Well, I had a bit of feeling that if I don't get on, I'm not going to get down to the ground. But then the spectators were very, very good and let me on the bus, so I thought that was very nice of them.
We were astonished by the number of people who were coming up. When we came down in a double-decker bus, we stopped there, and they were queuing up along Bacup Road, getting to the ground this was 1:10, which was unheard of in those days.
And an 18-year-old Fred Nichols, who was later to break into the Rawtenstall first team, was another one there to see this cricketing spectacle.
It was just a sea of people and the colours, etc. We'd never seen anything like it. before. It was absolutely wonderful, and a good day for it. Sunshine all the time, and of course to watch the two great players, Azare and Weeks. It's absolutely fantastic.
Coffee, please.
Still carrying on and packing the banking on one coffee.
For people like David Whittaker, sitting in the clubhouse watching a game which took place 56 years ago is a real trip down memory lane, seeing himself as a young man and playing in such a big match.
That's very interesting, really. Thinking things back to mind.
Everything was different then, wasn't it?
Oh, very much different, yes. Well, I'd been in the force as I came out in 1946, and well, let's live for cricket for 3 years.
It was a hot sunny day.
It was a wonderful summer, really, and this was one of the better days. I just saw myself walking out there.
You've just seen yourself?
Yes, just then, yeah.
Just watching Everton Weeks coming out to bat. I mean, what a player he was.
Probably the only real incident I was involved in, but I thought about, I can remember, was when he came in, I was feeling close in the gully. It wasn't very long before I pushed out to the covers, and somebody bowled a no ball, and he hit it straight to me. It was a miss hit. I think he'd heard the call early. I think it was the only bad shot he played all afternoon, I think, and I caught it. When I looked for 2 Bacup batsmen, were ambling taking an easy run, and I remember throwing it at the bowler's end where Weeks was running to, and I think if I'd actually hit the wicket, nobody standing up the wicket, if I'd actually hit the wicket, I think he might have been out. So he gave us a lot of hard work to do after that.
So that would have got you in the papers, wouldn't it? If you'd have hit the wicket, if you'd have got it, if you'd have run him out, that would have been a big thing.
Well, it was, but I don't suppose anybody remembers that, only me.
But Weeks is doing very well. The score's still mounting. They've got past the 80 mark. Weeks is about 45, I think he is. 45 or 6. 46. I think that boundary makes him 50. Yes, it does. 50 for Weeks out of 92. 93.
I played with him for a long time. We just enjoyed playing with Everton.
Why was he so good?
Wonderful eyesight. He was used to playing in Barbados, of course, and the sighting problem was so good, so little of it in those days, that his eyesight was absolutely brilliant. And he could, when we sat in the pavilion, Everton could pick the googly from the pavilion. Never mind that when he was batting, he could pick it.
You can hear Steve Wells bowling to Weeks. And he bowled Weeks. Oh, that's a grand stroke for Rawtenstall. Weeks is out. The score 134 for 3.
Everton, one of the greatest players that's been in the league, and a real gentleman. If he saw you in the street, he'd just pull up in his car and have a word with you. And he was one of the boys. And I remember him, some of the Bacup lads saying that after practice he took some of the kids to the chip shop and bought them some chips.
Yeah, and ice cream as well. But he was a real man, was Everton. I thought he was the best batter I've ever seen, that Everton Weeks. Other people have their own opinion.
Weeks got 74. It's a fine effort, a really fine effort on the part of Wells. Well, 134 for 3 is certainly a good start.
I batted well down the order. I was only in for a few overs until Tom declared. I was with Tom at the end of the innings, and my only instruction was keep getting one. give me the batting and I'll get some runs, because he was well set. So that's what I had to do. If you bat a low down, you didn't bat very often in the season. Everton scored so many runs. Such a great player. I mean, one of the best in the world, and he was a great player.
And now the Bacup captain has declared the innings closed. The score 210 for 7. Well, that's a good score. Incidentally, Graham's own score was 42 not out. Well, that was a sporting declaration if ever there was one. If Graham had batted a few minutes longer, he would have got his 50, and a very, very good collection indeed. But like a good captain, he's decided to put his side before himself.
One thing about it, and it stands out, with Tommy Graham, the skipper of Bacup, was on, I think it was about 43, 44, and declared with a 10,000 crowd gate. He must have been looking and thinking, what a collection there, but what a gentleman he was and what a sport he was to declare at when he a few runs short of his 50.
You didn't give us much time to bat, really, did you? To get these runs.
And back in the clubhouse, the local league stars of yesterday pondered on that Bacup score and the target that Rawtenstall had been set.
211 in just over 2 hours.
2 hours.
Oh, that was reasonable with
Now we'll have the Rawtenstall opening pair, Ingalls and Coop, coming in to open the Rawtenstall innings. Ingalls on the left, one of the best amateur batsmen in the league, partnered by Coop on the right. Both these batsmen are free-scoring batsmen.
I think our best bowler was Stanley Hall. I mean, how could he possibly think that he would get Nazari out for so few? But he did.
Nazari takes his guard, all bowls to him. And he snips that one and he's caught. Nazari's out, caught in the slips. And my goodness me, the Bacup people are jubilant indeed for the visions now of going right through the Rawtenstall innings.
That gave us a chance, which of course Tommy Incombs batted so well. I don't think he gave a chance. After about an hour and a half, I think it was a draw. We realised that we couldn't bowl them out on that wicket.
Benny Longworth, the captain, is now out. That's the 5th wicket to fall. Another Rawtenstall amateur will be coming in to bat. I think it will be Kenneth Barnes from the scorecard. He'll be coming in. Yes, there he is, Kenneth Barnes.
So it was a great game of Lancashire League cricket.
Yes, there it is. The match is over, and the players are leaving the field. And as usual, all the youngsters are there, gathering round them, hero-worshipping these fellows as they make their way to the dressing rooms.
For the players privileged to play in the game, such as Ken Barnes, Bob Banks and David Whittaker from Rawtenstall, and Dick Dunham from Bacup, all now in their 80s, and for the people who were watching, such as Fred Nichols and Arthur Howarth, it was a time to reflect on a match that ended with honours even.
I think you were frightened of Azari, weren't you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, he failed in both counts. He didn't get a run hardly, and he got 1 wicket. But he was a great player.
Well, he would have got 1 run, did Azari?
And 1 wicket.
It's the only failure I can ever remember him having.
Right. We would have gone for those runs, but different kind of player.
Yeah, 1 week.
And we would have got them too. That.
If Baker had batted last, they would have got the runs.
Yeah.
Or Weeks would have got.
And it was time too to reflect on a few stories from days gone by.
They were great runners between the wickets, weren't they? They used to make 1s into 2s and 2s into 3s.
If Everton was batting, he just said 2 and you went for 2.
Yeah.
You didn't bother. If you were out, that was unlucky.
Yeah.
But Everton was always in.
Yeah.
But that was the risk that you took. You had to take that risk. 2 it was. We were playing at Bacup, and I was bowling at one end and the professional at the other end. At the end of the over, the professional came and said to me, "Who's the blonde in the red dress by the sideboards?" So I told the professional, and he said, "Oh, it's nice, isn't she? Very nice." He said, "Oh, can you introduce me?" I said, "Well, yeah, I do know her." "Right, okay." He said, he said, move a fielder somewhere," he said, "and then the crowd will know we've been talking tactics." So I went to walking back, and I saw my mid-on, so I just moved him 5 yards. So first ball of the over, I bowled, and the batsman hit it straight to the fielder, caught it. Well, the professional was on his hands and knees in the slips, dying with laughter. On Monday morning, I was walking in the town, and one of the committeemen came up to me and said, "It just shows what a good brain he's got, and it should be his wicket, not yours."
But the truth was, it was all about a blonde. And Arthur Howarth, who has probably watched more local league games than most, remembers a time when the Rishton Australian professional caused chaos at Bacup.
I suppose you know about the Fred Freer game at Bacup. There was massive crowds, and at the time Weeks was opening the batting. The crowds were still coming along Greensnoot Lane to queue up to get on. Fred Freer had him LBW first ball of the match. They were telling the people outside the ground, "He's out," and the spectators were turning back and going. Needless to say, he didn't open again, for a few matches. I don't think they dare put him in that position again.
This was a year in which modern communications were not what they are today. But as Ken Barnes remembers, the club devised an unusual way of telling local people what had happened.
Every Saturday night after the cricket match, whoever we played, home or away, we used to tell the supporters of the town how the club had gone on. And the way they did it was that if we won a match, they fired 2 rockets into the sky, and if we made a draw, they fired 1 rocket. And it was amazing that when you left the field and you went home and saw all the people waiting outside houses just to watch or hear for this rocket going up to find out just how Rawtenstall had gone on. It's absolutely wonderful.
And if you lost?
If we lost, there was nothing.
This was quite an unusual way of giving out a score.
It was the idea of our president then, George Whittaker. He had all the big ideas. He started and we had the first electric scoreboard on Rawtenstall, which Mr. Whittaker instigated. And at one time, he were talking about having a dome over the ground, so that if it were a wet day, we could play cricket. And that really ambitious times were those, and some great ideas. But obviously that never materialised.
A rural cricket match in Bacup time, seen and heard through the trees. It is surely the loveliest scene in England and the most disarming sound.
But what did happen later that season was that George Whittaker arranged for the film to be shown at the ground after setting up a special big screen, and Arthur Howarth came back to watch it.
I think it was later that season, one evening they had a big screen up on the ground, showed the film of the match. The screen, if my memory is correct, was erected back to the terracing. All the people watched from the field, and it was something unusual to see colour film in those days.
An hour and a half to get
To put us into that.
something ridiculous.
And it's thanks to George Whittaker that these former players can see themselves in action so many years ago. The club's current chairman, Brian Payne, and committee members Brian Manning and Steve Riley may be envious of the crowds of those times, but do want to preserve an important part of the club's history.
It's just been nice to be able to bring old friends back together again. I mean, some of these people don't see one another very much. They've obviously really enjoyed themselves here today. If we don't do these kind of things now, in another 10 years, it's probably going to be too late.
You set me down batting number 11, and when I was going down the pavilion steps, these people were actually hitting me as I was going out, saying how ridiculous it was that this fella Banks was sending number 11 in.
It means an awful lot to me, because my own particular family history with the club goes back a long, long time. I'm heart and soul in this club.
Brian Manning, what's it like to have all these guys here and people who were at the game at the time back together?
I think the best part about it is that for them it's bringing back some terrific memories. To see the film as well, that increases the interest that they've got, because it was a great time for cricket in Lancashire League.
I never had a thigh pad until Azari was here in '49, and he gave me his old one. Before that, he used to push down Wizard or Skipper or Champion or something like that.
Jack Dunham used to come in when Alan Walker was the pro here, batting with a Bacup Times stuff down. Yeah.
And a towel. You used to have a towel round.
Brian Payne, how important is it to keep the memory of the history of this club alive, so to speak?
It's very important. Yeah. It's great to be able to look back on films like this. Must have been tremendous.
As you have seen, thousands of people saw this match today, yet there were others in the town and the surrounding districts not so fortunate.
It's just a piece of local history. It's not just the history of Rawtenstall Cricket Club. It's Rossendale history. It's history of the north of England. It's a historical document.
Still carrying on and tracking the...
And as the reunion drew to a close, it was time for a few more reflections on that golden year of cricket. In post-war Britain in 1949, food rationing was still around, luxuries were few and far between, and the working week mostly extended into a Saturday, but people were content. And as Dick Dunham remembers well, the players on his Bacup team had only a few years before been involved in the war.
Of that team, the great majority would have been in the forces. So to come back out of the forces, one thing, you were alive, which was quite something, and some of them had pretty awful experiences in the war. And Stanley Banham came back severely disabled because he'd been a prisoner of war. But there he was playing cricket again, and he was a great wicket keeper. So it was wonderful. There was a great relief to be able to play cricket, and everybody was thankful. 49, the war was over 45. Wonderful.
Were times hard, or was there a bit more prosperity around?
Oh, times were hard. The food situation was quite miserable, as you probably know. So it was that wasn't easy. And as I said, the average wage, it was quite low. But I think people had a fair standard of living. Not as it is today, but they did go on holiday. Only a week. They didn't get a fortnight, or they worked Saturday morning.
Can you remember how much you used to earn as a clockmaker?
Well, I think they averaged £6-7 a week. About the average wage.
And on that Saturday morning you went to work?
Yes, I probably went to work. Most people did. I mean, I think Tommy Graham would be at work. He was in the bank. And I think the banks would be open Saturday morning.
And for Bob Banks, who took 2 wickets on the day, and Ken Barnes, this ground holds a special place in their hearts. As we look across the ground now, has it changed much at all, Bob?
No, it hasn't changed at all. Alice Mill's a bit cleaner, that's all. But the ground is just the same. It's a bit more palatial than it was. All these seating accommodation, and we used to be sitting on the grass up by the back of the seats there. Right before they built those houses, they were all sat up there by the banking. This clubhouse wasn't here then, was it, Kenneth? No, it's an old hut. We used to have a hut there. Now that's changed.
And it must have been quite a sight when it was full.
Oh, remarkable, wasn't it?
Absolutely wonderful to see people, especially when you were playing, thinking so many people were watching you play cricket.
And for Fred Nichols, a spectator for this match but who was to become a regular for Rawtenstall in later years, this was a taste of things to come and a special time for league cricket.
Very happy, in as far as I was concerned. Everyone had the cloth caps, of course, but it was difficult. The conditions now we have of all the modern appliances, they weren't there. There was coal shortage, there was food shortage. Yes, it were difficult times, particularly for parents who had, young children, etc.
How important was cricket to help, recover from those wartime years?
Very, very important. I think the size of the crowd you see on the particular day you're reviewing today emphasises just how important it was. And
Arthur Howarth, who spent a lifetime watching the Lancashire League, says this match does stand out as the one to remember. And as we look across the ground now, can you remember where you were sitting?
Oh, I'd be sat somewhere on the terrace.
Come down here then. Let's. So we're walking down here now, and it was absolutely packed then. And
yes, the terracing was absolutely packed.
And we're walking towards the scoreboard. So do you remember exactly where you were at the time?
No, I can't. Only somewhere, I think, fairly high up on the terracing.
And when Everton Weeks went out to bat, is there a great air of expectation was amongst the crowd?
Oh yes, there always was, yes. He drew the crowds wherever he played.
Was this the golden era of Lancashire League cricket? 49?
It was, as far as I'm concerned, yes. Yes, definitely. Everybody watched sport in those days.
And do you think it's right to remember these sort of occasions, such a match?
Well, it is as far as I'm concerned, yes. Well, it was a great occasion. It was worth remembering.
And from this remarkable match has come a remarkable story of how the family of the Bacup captain, Tom Graham, have remained in contact with the West Indian star Everton Weeks, still a legend in his home country of Barbados. Alec Graham and his sister Ruth have kept in touch even after the death of their father and have been to Weeks' home to talk about the old days. Alec says he was very young when the West Indian batsman spent his years playing for Bacup in the Lancashire League.
Yeah, obviously I was only probably about 6, 7, 8 years old, so it's a bit of a vague memory, but yeah, I mean, he came over with his family at the time. I think they stayed in Bacup. He had a lad at the time called Andy, who was about my age. But basically, when we went to watch cricket at Bacup, it was more occasionally just playing in the sandpit and collecting bottles of pop and that sort of thing. There wasn't that much interest in the cricket, but Everton being such a damn good player, I mean, I think the stories about what he did at cricket are legend, but one thing that sticks in my mind is if you're a bit late for the game, which kicked off at 2 o'clock at Lane Head, get the bus up to Bacup and walking up Lane Head, and you could be like, what, 2:15, 2:30. If Everton was out, people were just walking back down. They didn't want to bother paying to go in. And that was the influence he had on the gates, let alone anything else.
The family's contact with Everton Weeks has ensured that those golden years are still talked about. The highlight came in 1994 when Ruth decided to look up Everton on a trip to the island.
My sister got back in touch, and I think I went out with her in 1998, and there were about 10 of us in a group, and we went to the cricket at Bridgetown and had a drink with Everton there, and he came out for a meal with us, and then he invited us round for supper at his place down in Oystons, and we had a great night with him, and he was able to show us photographs of his days at Bacup and everything. But a nice bloke, and he's still very much involved in cricket, and he's a legend, as you can imagine, on the island. Obviously, it was great that he got the knighthood. One other thing, actually, I do know is that he's an international bridge player. He does play bridge for the West Indies, and he still keeps that going, even though he must be 80 by now. Unfortunately, he's in good health and a great character still.
And so those golden years of 1949 will continue to be talked about, memories passed on to other generations, helped by one man's vision to capture on film what was a remarkable sporting and social occasion.
And so I would like to say to all who've taken part in this game, whether as players or workers or spectators, well played the players, well done you workers, and thank you, you spectators, for your generosity and your sportsmanship. With this spirit, the spirit you have shown today, the future of our cricket is secure indeed.
The voice there of George Whittaker, the president of Rawtenstall Cricket Club, back in 1949, ending that remarkable look back to that match between Rawtenstall and Bacup, in which Everton Weeks, the former West Indian legend, played. The programme was produced and presented by Chris Ryder, who tells me that he did speak to Everton, but he didn't want to take part in the programme. However, Chris was told later that a copy of the broadcast had been sent to the great man, so that was good enough. If you've missed any of the programmes so far in this series, it's not too late to catch up. Visit our website at bbc.co.uk/Lancashire and simply follow the link to play it again.